Get it over with, Joe.
Well, I'll say it again. I wasn't within 20 miles of Indian Leap.
Then you got nothing to be afraid of.
Now, haven't I? All I saw was a rabbit, a buck, and that sorrel. They gonna testify in my behalf?
Well, I guess somebody better tell Jake Parson about Pete.
Don't worry. I don't doubt that all the Parsons have heard about it by now.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I gotta see Hiram Wood. You boys coming along?
No, we'll keep Joe company.
Yeah, make sure you don't get no uninvited company.
That's a good idea. I didn't want to hurt Pete, but I just couldn't let him kill somebody in cold blood, could I? I had to shoot.
Of course you did, Ben. Of course you did. But right now, the Parsons are the least of your worries. Well, let's face it. This has turned out to be a lot more serious than I'd anticipated. With a witness like John Hardner. John have any reason to lie, Ben?
Oh, no, not John Hardner. What?
Ben, this is a difficult question for me to ask you. Are you sure that little Joe is telling the whole truth?
You'd ask me to doubt my son.
No, I'm not asking that. All I'm asking is, do you think there's any chance that little Joe...
If I were to start doubting my son at this point, everything I've lived and worked for would be lost.
Ben, I'm your lawyer. I have to think the way a jury's going to think. Believe me, with this latest news about the girl and John Hardner's testimony, this is going to come before a jury.
Hiram, what do we do?
Well, you two have a good time at the reception?
Oh, Father, it was absolutely wonderful. Jerome made such an impression on the governor. The governor hardly noticed anyone else.
I was surprised how young he is. We did seem to have a lot in common. He even wanted to know my views on politics.
Yeah, that's fine, Jerome, that's fine. Right now, politics can wait. We've got something much more urgent to consider at the moment.
Well, yes, sir, of course. As a matter of fact, it's been on my mind all during the reception.
I'm glad to hear that. You come up with any ideas?
Well, sir, I don't like to say this about the dead, but with that girl's reputation, I don't think there's a jury in Virginia City that would convict little Joe.
Jerome, what a dreadful thing to say.
Well, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but we're fighting for a man's life.
Hiram, suppose we took Jake Parsons' buggy back up to Indian Leap again and have John Hardner show us exactly what he saw.
That might be an excellent idea, Ben. If there's any possibility of showing that John Hardner was mistaken, why, I think...
That's just it.
But what happens, sir, if it confirms John Hardner's statement? Then we'll have no case at all in court. No, sir, I think we've got to fight this out on the basis of the reputations of that girl and Mr. Cartwright's son.
Mr. Bell, we are going on the assumption that little Joe is innocent.
Yes, sir, of course. I'm just pointing out that legally we might be taking unwarranted risk.
You've got a point there, Ben. There would be some risk involved.
It's a risk I'm perfectly willing to take.
I hope we don't regret this, Mr. Wood.
I want the man that shot my son.
The rifle, Jake. Put it down. You won't need it in here.
Where's Ben Cartwright?
I'm right here, Jake.
Pete took the law into his own hands, tried to shoot an unarmed man. Mr. Cartwright did the only thing he could do in self-defense.
It's true, Jake. I saw it.
Hardner, seems to me like you jumped the fence. You was going to testify little Joe was with my Mary. Now you're siding with Cartwright's.
I'm not siding with anybody. I saw little Joe and Mary up at Indian Leap. I'll say it under oath. I also saw Pete trying to shoot an unarmed man. I'll swear to that, too.
I had no choice. I'm sorry it happened, Pete.
One of mine dead, one shot. And all I hear anybody say is, I'm sorry.
There's one thing we can do, Jake. We can take your buggy up to Indian Leap again in the morning.
Why?
So John Hardner can show us where he was when the buggy passed him. We can all get a good look at what he saw.
Hardner says he's seen little Joe. You want him to change his mind?
My son's life is at stake. I'm just trying to get at the truth.
All I'm thinking about is my daughter was killed. And your son did it.
Well, now, supposing it wasn't little Joe. Suppose it was somebody else. Wouldn't you want to know who it was?
All right, boys. We'll give him that chance. But if we find what I think we will, there won't be no need of holding a trial.
All right, bring on the buggy. Hold it.
John, is this as close as you got to that buggy?
Just about the exact spot, Ben.
Well, we can't see the man's face, and we're afoot. How can you see him sitting as high as you are?
I didn't say I could see his face from here. I sure saw his paint horse tied on behind the buggy.
He probably turned and looked when you got down on the road.
Stop putting words in his mouth. Move the buggy on down the road. Now you ride down to the road and make your turn.
I remember. Now I can tell you how I knew it was little Joe. When the buggy made the curve, the man had his foot on the dash. I could see his leg.
What does that prove? When did you see his face?
I didn't have to see his face. His leg was enough. He was wearing his gun tied down to his left leg. That's how I knew it was little Joe.
Well, what'd you find out?
Just what we knew we'd find. Well, Deputy, what do you say now?
Inquest will be in my office at 2 o'clock. I'm just seeing to it that whatever needs doing is done proper and legal.
My sister's dead. The man that pushed her off that cliff is still alive. You call that legal and proper?
I said there'd be an inquest and a trial.
There'll be a trial and a hanging.
We heard what you said, Mr. Hardner. And if you don't say it again so everybody can hear, you won't live to get off that witness chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hardner. Will the foreman of the coroner's jury please rise? Have you reached a verdict?
Yeah, we sure have.
State it.
Mary Parson was murdered by little Joe Cartwright.
Jim, you know better than to say that. All you're to determine is the cause of death. Anything else will be decided by a judge and jury at the proper time.
Well, that is the cause of death. Little Joe Cartwright pushed her off of that cliff.
If the jury finds that she died by violence, it'll have to be it. Deputy Conley?
Joseph Cartwright, you're hereby bound over to stand trial for the murder of Mary Parson.